Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now.
The newborn, man. This is your first child, right? First child?
This is my third child, but my
Oh,
first with my fiance.
okay. So, how wild of a roller coaster ride has this fight camp been for you?
It's definitely been a little bit different, I mean, fight camps are already hard enough with dieting and all the extra exercise and travel and stuff for training. So it did add a little bit of an extra element to it, but I think we handle it really well.
It's a great time in your life, right?
Yeah, we're super excited. Yeah, now the baby's here, so I can focus on the rest of the fight camp. We have like 9 days left right now.
Was it planned like this? Like, did you expect to fight earlier before the due date? What was?
I told the UFC, I was like, I'll fight in February or April, just not March. And then they found me a fight in March. So I talked with my fiance and I was like, it's March 30th. Our due date was supposed to be March 12th. So I was like, oh well, we should have a few weeks to kind of settle in. And then of course the baby ended up being a little bit late. So but yeah, I think it's all going to work out for the best, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as long as it doesn't come during fight week, that would have been just a nightmare, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely would have been tricky.
Yeah. Let's talk about last year, man. It was a great year for you professionally. You went undefeated in 3 fights. I believe you signed a new contract with the UFC. Could you describe that year that you had and the impact that it had on your career?
Yeah, I think it was, the culmination of all my hard work. I think when I got into the UFC, I got in on a short notice fight at 155, and then it took me a little bit to kind of get my bearings at 145 in the UFC. I think I got a little too excited. I was training a lot, but I think I was putting on too much muscle, and you could kind of see that in some of my earlier fights in the UFC. Between the extra muscle and the weight cuts not going as smooth as they had before, which I think kind of fell back on the muscle, because it's obviously a lot harder to lose muscle than it is to lose fat. So yeah, it just took me a while to kind of find my bearings in that, and then as soon as I did, walking around with a little bit less muscle now, the weight cuts are going easier, and that's allowing me to go the whole distance of the 15 minutes. And as I get more comfortable going the distance and relying on my cardio and my skill set, now I can start to, ramp up the pressure and the intensity and stuff and start looking for finishes now a little bit more.
Definitely. And the weight cuts, man, if you have a bad weight cut, it pretty much destroys all the work that you did for 8, 10 weeks, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you could really tell in some of my earlier fights, like my fight against like Billy Quarantillo, where I would, the first round seemed like I was dominating. And then even beginning of the second round, skill wise, just getting the better of him. And then you can just visibly see my energy, kind of drop off. And it was the same in my fight against Diego Ferreira, Matt Sales, pretty much all those early fights. Once we got, halfway through the second round, you could see, my body just start to shut down. And then it was kind of downhill from there, even though, I feel like I was getting the better of most of those guys, skill wise.
Yeah, when you look back at it, those were some competitive rounds at the start. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
you reveal a lot of like why those performances happen that way. I'm happy that everything's fixed. You're on a win streak now. But going back to the first fight of last year, the draw against Du Ho Choi, does that result bother you?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, I would have loved for it to be a win, but even coming out with a draw against Du Ho Choi with the competitiveness of the fight, I think I gained just as many fans. I think in that fight, whether it was a win or a draw. So I'm not. I mean, I'd love to run it back and fight. You know, get it settled. But I know we haven't seen Duho back in the UFC yet. So, hopefully he's doing well, and yeah, maybe down the road we could run it back.
I'm down for it. I want to see it again. It'd be cool to have him return against you again. Why not?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Your last performance against Fernando Padilla, I mean, you went in there and did great work. What did you see, ahead of the fight in Padilla that you could take advantage of?
So he's definitely tall. He's got great boxing. And I mean, he's got good Muay Thai as well, knees and elbows and stuff like that. But I think where he shines is using his length to box. And so it was just, using my skill set with some of the stuff like the calf kicks, the head movement, and then threatening with a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of clinch. I knew if I could work all that stuff and just play it towards my game, and being the shorter fighter, just using that to my advantage. My fight before that, I fought Blake Bilder, who's a bit shorter than me. So then I got to use some of my length and try and be the taller, longer fighter. And then I had to, kind of switch the script and almost do the opposite against Fernando Padilla and try and, be the shorter fighter, a little bit of head movement, stay tight in my shell so that he couldn't hit me with those long shots.
Your next opponent, Bill Algeo, thoughts on him and his fighting style?
So it's going to be, kind of similar to Fernando Padilla and even, my fight a couple years ago in London with
Jai Herbert.
Jai Herbert. That's it. Yeah. Because again, Herbert was a taller guy, more of a striker. Same with Fernando Padilla. I mean, they've all got slightly different styles because Bill Algeo is more of like a Taekwondo, karate, really light on his feet, throwing side kicks, switching stances, spinning kicks, and stuff like that. But he's taller and he's going to be long. So we're going to take, the stuff that worked well against, Jai and Fernando, and then we're going to mix it up a little bit with some new techniques that we've been working on for Bill specifically.
Do you think like his ground game is probably better than Padilla and Herbert?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is better than both those guys. I think Bill's maybe got some of the best ground game that I've faced. Obviously, my first fight against Diego, he was a high level jiu-jitsu black belt, but I think Bill's going to be the next best jiu-jitsu guy maybe that I've faced. But I still think I've got a bit of an edge on him in the jiu-jitsu world, so I don't think it's going to play that much of a factor. I think as long as I'm a little bit better than him in the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling, then I can nullify his offense. And then if I want to take it there, I can use some of my offense. But again, in the UFC, everybody's so high level that, you're only going to get a little bit of an advantage here or there, especially at 145 with how competitive everybody is. So I'm comfortable with my jiu-jitsu level versus Bill's jiu-jitsu level. And I can, stop his offense for sure. And if I want, I think my jiu-jitsu and wrestling offense will work against him.
And you've been in front of a crowd your last couple of fights, man. It's way better than the Apex, right? Like you fought at the Apex. It's just
yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing's going to beat kind of fighting in Canada in front of the Canadian crowd. But yeah, I mean, even fighting in Las Vegas on Mexican Independence Day against a Mexican fighter, was, the crowd, you still get energy from the crowd, even though maybe they weren't cheering for me as much. It was still exciting to have, all those people there watching the fight.
Yeah. Back to back, so-called enemy territory, right? Bill Algeo's from that region, Atlantic City, around that area, I believe. New Jersey, maybe? I think so, right?
So yeah, the fight's in New Jersey. He's from like Philadelphia, maybe,
right.
Or something with a P, anyways. So yeah, like right there, pretty close.
Yeah, so same environment basically you're gonna head into with the Padilla and him, which is fun, man. Do you get fuel from that? Just because you're not really like the heel or anything like that, but you just makes you the heel when you go into something like this, right?
Yeah, and I mean, most of my career, I've always been the away guy. When I was fighting like regionally in Canada, I'd be fighting people in their hometowns. Once I got in the UFC, I'm either fighting people in their hometowns or we're kind of in neutral territory because maybe we're in Vegas or something like that. But I'm usually the underdog, and I'm usually the away guy. So it's kind of a role I've accepted now. And usually in the fight, with my style and the exciting fight, I'm able to win over the fans no matter who they are.
For sure. And training camp, I mean, it seems like you found a good formula for yourself in the last year. I mean, you've made the right changes. Any more changes you've made, during this camp or whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, we're always building. We have found a nice routine now. Earlier in my UFC career, we tried the training camps in Las Vegas, and we tried traveling a bit and this and that. And I mean, you can get good training anywhere, but when you're, again, the away guy, and it's, they're not your kind of home gym coaches, I don't think you get as much attention as you do at your own gym. And then obviously here, I'm at home. So I go home, see my fiance, she makes me some food, everything's in sync. And I think it goes much smoother this way. So yeah, we've definitely found a nice groove. And then with that, we're able to add little changes here or there. And, it's with those little increments, we get a little bit better as opposed to doing a big change and either it works or it doesn't work. With the little changes, we know if it works or it doesn't, and we can alter it as we go, but it's not a do or die like going to Vegas for the training camp would be.
Sparring are you bringing people in, or are you just sparring with your close teammates? Are you traveling a little bit for sparring?
Yeah, so I go to Niagara Top Team, and I go there in and out of training camp. So we got enough guys because that's kind of where all the pros kind of in Ontario meet. Even in Canada, a lot of people travel there. So we got enough bodies where I can find tall guys if I need, 45ers, taekwondo guys. So I'm able to kind of pick and choose a bit and find the right opponents and training partners for my opponent.
Nice. So what's your vision for this fight?
So I mean, I'd love to walk in there and put him away quick, but Bill's definitely a durable guy. He's eating some big head kicks, big punches from guys. So I'm not expecting to put him away too early, but I do think I'm going to get to the target a lot. I'm going to be landing the cleaner punches, and I'm definitely going to hurt him early and often. And I think with that, I'll chip away, and we'll probably see a finish in the end of the second round.
Do you see your openings where he's more of he takes risks, right? In fights, he likes to throw those unorthodox. Do you see your openings there?
Yeah, absolutely. That's obviously one of the big things about Bill is his defense. He moves a lot to try and make himself harder to hit, but again, like I have so much accuracy in my shots that I'm going to be able to touch him all the time, and then he's going to try and just throw a bunch of stuff and have a bunch of output and try and win, on the judges' scorecard just by being busy. But again, once I find those openings and once he kind of gets hit with some of these clean shots that he's not used to getting hit with, you're definitely going to see him slow down and second guess some of his stuff. Or he's either going to do that or he's going to ramp everything up and double down, kind of like a Bill Algeo, Billy Quarantillo, where when stuff starts going wrong, he just ups the cardio and ups the output. And either one of those, kind of ways he's going to go, I've got answers for him. And yeah, I definitely think I'm gonna frustrate him and yeah, finish him in the second.
A couple questions outside your fight. There's a new champion in the division, Ilia Topuria. Do you see him reigning long term in the division as a champion?
I think it's a little too early to tell. I think the biggest kind of question or answer is going to be in Max Holloway. I think if we see Topuria versus Holloway and we see how that goes, that's going to tell us a lot whether Topuria is here to stay, or if Max can kind of stay long and kind of outstrike him and pick him apart for 5 rounds. Unfortunately, I mean, we got Max, versus Justin Gaethje, which is going to be a cool fight, but it's, I really want to see Max against Topuria. So hopefully Max, gets to his fight at UFC 300 and he can have a quick turnaround and we can see him fight somebody like Ilia Topuria and see if Topuria is here to stay. Without Max Holloway, I don't see who's going to challenge him. I don't think Sugar Sean is going to be able to come up and really challenge Topuria. I think he's going to have too much power and he's going to get inside. I think Topuria would put Sugar Sean away. Otherwise, in the 145 division right now, I just don't know who else is going to challenge Topuria. We've seen him beat guys like Josh Emmett, like other power punchers. We've seen him beat guys like Bryce Mitchell, really good jiu-jitsu guys and stuff. So I don't know who else is going to challenge him, but I think Max, might have his number.
Dana White, he recently did an interview. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but he says that Kamaru Usman is the greatest welterweight of all time. And I was like, did he forget about GSP? GSP is one of the greatest fighters of all time. How can Kamaru Usman be the greatest welterweight? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have George St. Pierre as my greatest of all time for sure. And I don't see how Usman stacks up against George. I think, again, if they fight each other in their prime, I think George is just much more well-rounded. Like, I think if George had fought somebody like Leon Edwards, I think we would have seen, George dismantle him, fairly easily by taking him down and wrestling. I think George was just much better at taking guys to their weaknesses and again, wrestling the strikers and striking the wrestlers. And I just didn't see that out of Kamaru Usman. It felt like if he could wrestle people, he could beat them. If not, against like Leon Edwards, he couldn't wrestle him, and we saw the results of that. So I think Usman was good. I just don't think he stacks up against George St. Pierre.
Yeah, George St. Pierre, one of the highest levels of fight IQ we've ever seen, right? That's why he won. That's why he was in 14 title fights. I think people forget too fast about the legends in the sport. One last thing, Combat Sports Anti-Doping, that's the entity that's controlling the drug testing for the UFC now. They just suspended their first guy, Walt Harris. 4 years. Did you see that?
Yeah, I just saw that today. I haven't got any of the specifics, but I'm like 4 years is pretty insane. I think that's probably the longest suspension I've seen. And I don't know for what yet. So I can't say whether it was warranted or not. I just don't know what you would have to do to earn a 4-year suspension because, that's guys' careers, right? Like some guys only last a year or 2 years in the UFC, let alone to last 4 years, but then to be suspended for 4 years, that's your whole prime almost, from like 30 to 34 is your prime. So if they take that away from you, you've worked your whole life to try and make, enough money in your prime to kind of warrant and justify all the hard work you've put in, and then to be suspended for 4 years. It's got to be a pretty heavy substance or something that they caught him with to warrant that.
Yeah, because TJ Dillashaw was caught for EPO, and I think he was only suspended for 3 years. So I believe Walt Harris has multiple failed tests, and it's how the scientific words come out of all the things they get. But I know what you're talking about. We don't know what exactly it is, but yeah, it's pretty hefty. I'm pretty sure it's justified if they're going to give somebody that long of a suspension. But anyways, March 30th, man, you're back in action, Atlantic City. This is a hell of a matchup. Kyle, thank you so much for your time and all the best in the fight.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on. And yeah, make sure everybody tunes in March 30th. We're going to make this a 3-fight win streak and keep moving forward.